Hi, I'm Kelly Gherkin, the founder and director of Sufficient Grace Ministries. For the last 20 years, Sufficient Grace Ministries has had the honor of partnering with hospitals as we come alongside grieving parents to remember and celebrate babies with brief lives, those lost through miscarriage, stillbirth, infant death, and those who receive a life-limiting diagnosis in pregnancy. SGM has also offered CEU approved training for medical professionals, and Dreams of You resources are provided worldwide to the hospitals and bereaved families we encounter. Out of roughly 3,750,000 annually reported pregnancies in the United States, 1 in 4 ends in loss. Thinking of that in different terms, every 45 seconds, a mother experiences a miscarriage. Every 20 minutes, a baby is born still between 20 and 40 weeks gestation, and 72 infants die in the first year of life each day. When the unthinkable happens, Sufficient Grace Ministries is here to provide support and comfort to these families. My own family's journey began in 1996 when we experienced the loss of our twin daughters, Faith and Grace, 6.5 months into our pregnancy, due to a condition that impacts twins called twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. Following that pregnancy, we were diagnosed midway through the subsequent pregnancy with a life-limiting condition for our son Thomas called Potter's syndrome or renal agenesis, which is the absence of kidneys. We chose to continue that pregnancy, carrying Thomas for 4.5 more months, knowing that his life was expected to be brief. Those months were spent planning a funeral and praying for a miracle, wondering often how I would get through it, how all of us would get through it. My oldest son, Timothy, pictured here, was 2.5 and 4 at the time of our losses. The losses impacted his life and our young family's life in so many ways. I had a mentor named Dinah who used to say, when I would say, how do I get through this again? How do I give birth to another baby that I do not get to keep with me? And she would say, God doesn't give us the grace we need tomorrow, today. He only gives us enough to get through today, and his grace will be sufficient for you. I clung to those words, although I didn't always believe it. But when it came time for us to meet our Thomas, I was amazed by the peace that I felt that surpasses all human understanding. And I felt joy and honor and privilege to be chosen as his mother. He lived for 6 hours, and as I rocked him and sang to him as he left this earth, I had such a precious moment of just knowing that I was not alone and that God was with me and his grace was sufficient. And I was so grateful to be chosen to be the mother of this precious boy. You'll see a picture here of Faith and Grace's footprints, as well as Thomas opening his eyes for just a moment. When the nurse placed him in my arms, he only opened his eyes for that second. And a thoughtful nurse had the presence of mind to capture a picture with a disposable camera, because that was back in the times when we didn't carry a phone with us and have a camera access to us readily available to capture every moment. So I wasn't thinking about a picture. I was just thinking about meeting my son. But that nurse had the presence of mind to take a picture. And I've always said, especially before we had digital technology, that these precious moments, these tangible memories are evidence that my daughters and my son, that Faith and Grace and Thomas lived and that they were here. Because a mother, when she's grieving, she worries about forgetting her child. And trauma affects our memories and it steals some of those memories. So to have a picture, to have a footprint, to have something that says they lived and they were here and they mattered is so precious. So I'm so grateful that nurse captured this precious moment of Thomas meeting his mama. My family today is made up of my husband and I, and our son Timothy, who has just recently turned 30 and is married and expecting his first child with his wife, Hannah, and our youngest son, James, who was born after our losses, is also just recently graduated from Bowling Green State University and is about to get married this year to his fiancee, Natalie. So you might be thinking, that makes sense. She wanted to see something beautiful born from her pain, some purpose from that pain. And actually, that wasn't me at all. I stayed as far away from pregnancy and infant loss at first as possible. I just wanted to nurse my new baby, stay married, and go to the Little League game. Um, I really wasn't looking to start a ministry. About 8 years after the loss of Faith and Grace, a friend of mine received a life limiting diagnosis, and I was supporting her. And it was sort of like waking up. It was the first time I wondered what would have brought me comfort? What do I wish that I would have had? And I wanted to create a baby book for a life that was brief, a place for a parent to put all the dreams they had for their baby, and to say, this baby lived, this baby was here, this baby mattered. And I couldn't find anything adequate to give to my friend, so I created the first Dreams of You memory book in 2004. And it didn't look like the beautiful one that you see here today. It was a very handmade, primitive effort, but it had a place to put, to write about your baby, to write the dreams you had for your baby, to have footprints and handprints, a place for that had poems and pretty pictures, a place to journal, and just to say, this baby was here, this baby mattered to me. My mother made the first comfort bears early on, and she made the bears until 2006, when she passed away after a battle with cancer at the age of 50. And I think my mom Kathy gets to look down from heaven and smile as she sees her comfort bears going all over the world, and that there's now an army of ladies who make the bears, and many people in the community who stuff the bears. So many hands and so much love poured into each one. We added other resources over the years as we connected families. I wrote my own family story in the book Sufficient Grace. We also compiled and wrote the Walking with You series for grieving mothers, grieving grandparents, and grieving fathers. And many of our families that we've served have given their testimonies over the years to be included in those books. We also developed a line of brochures with helpful information for loss in any gestation, for threatened miscarriage, as well as those carrying a baby with a life-limiting diagnosis. As we connected with more families on our blog and our website, we began shipping these items free of charge to families all over the world. But we learned from each family, what were their regrets? What did they wish they had? And what can we do to alleviate those regrets? In 2006, we began connecting with medical professionals, and we learned that there was very little education on perinatal and neonatal loss. Even though we saw those statistics of 1 in every 4 pregnancies ending in loss, medical professionals were focusing on how to save lives, but there was very little information for them in preparation on what to do when a baby dies. And so those young nurses and doctors were just flung into those situations. And when a parent goes through the loss of a baby, they really have never thought about, what would I do? What would I do if my baby died? What do I want? What's important to me? You're in shock, you're in trauma, and you have this tiny window to fit a lifetime of memories into moments. And so if the people guiding you through that experience don't know how to help you, you're going to miss out on opportunities to create those precious memories with your baby. And later, in a week, a month, 6 months from now, those parents have regrets. And so in 2006, SGM began offering parent-centered CEU-approved perinatal and neonatal loss support training for birth professionals. We have now trained over 1,500 nurses, many doctors. We also have trained some social workers and chaplains, and many of our volunteers as well. So our certified perinatal and neonatal loss support comfort doulas, to go into those hospitals and come alongside families and to really change that experience, to make sure that the families have what they need and we can alleviate some of those regrets. As we were continuing to connect with families and birth professionals, we realized that even with training, not every nurse was going to be comfortable or have the time to spend hours offering some of these services. And so we created our perinatal hospice birth and bereavement service program in 2013, where we began training comfort doulas certified in perinatal loss, as well as remembrance photographers. And now all of our volunteers are actually trained in both skills. In case only one person can go, we want to make sure that those families get that support they need, as well as the remembrance photography. And you'll see our team comes in and we bring clothing to fit babies in any gestation. We come alongside the bedside so a parent can bathe their baby, they can diaper their baby, put a hat on their baby, have an outfit that fits their baby, make a choice of what outfit they give to their baby, or a blanket or a hat, and have photos to capture those precious memories. And when a parent's walking through this, as I mentioned, they don't know necessarily, there many parents don't know what they would want. And so to have someone come in and normalize and give value to that child, no matter how tiny, and to help the parents kind of look past some of their fear and even their pain, and see the beauty of their child and connect with their child, and give them some of those moments and opportunities to parent back. They can still give their baby a bath, they can still diaper their baby, and help to capture those memories. And so that's what our team comes in to do. And we often get to see a transformation from the beginning of when we come in, and we begin offering these items. There's a transformation as the parents' fear falls away, and they feel permission then to grieve, to connect, to celebrate, to honor their baby, and that they see someone else coming in to value their baby, and then they know that they're allowed to do that too. And it's just a beautiful transformation we see with our families often when we come in, from the beginning of the call to the end, when they're able to hold their baby and have some peace. It gives them that something to do next, and those tangible, precious memories, and just that validation of the life of their child. There's no one more equipped to parent a baby, whether alive or not, than his or her parents. And so that's what we're there to do, not just in life, but also in death. A parent is equipped to parent their child. As we look at this picture, I invite you to consider that loss touches people from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life. It doesn't matter our religious beliefs, the color of our skin, what our life experience is. Loss is touching so many families. And also that it's not just mom and dad who are impacted. You see siblings here, you see grandparents, you see the medical professionals engaging with these families. So many people are impacted. And the other piece is that we think about the grief and the devastation of loss, but when the loss of a baby happens, birth and loss are happening at the same time. And so, yes, there is sorrow, but there's also opportunities for celebration and joy. Maybe we connect and see, oh, that baby has mom's nose or dad's big toe, and we see a smile and a connection, as we're able to help these parents meet their babies and spend precious time with their babies. We have the most amazing volunteers at Sufficient Grace Ministries, and we cannot do this without our volunteers and donors. And it's because of their generosity and their sharing of gifts that we're able to serve so many families with excellence. Our volunteers gave more than 13,000 hours in 2023 and donated hundreds of items. Some are in the thousands, it looks like, and 245 families were served in person by our team last year. Our volunteers crochet wraps and blankets, hats and gowns. They sew comfort bears and other beautiful items, diapers and other things. We have an artist that paints canvases so that we can put those precious footprints and handprints on the canvases, those special memories for the families. And we have many community groups. We have fraternities, students, church groups, volleyball players, cheerleaders, workplaces who host comfort bear stuffing events. And it is a really non-threatening way to talk about such a difficult subject. We've seen our comfort bears become their own home ministries. We can talk about pregnancy and infant loss awareness, healthy ways to grieve, ways to what are kind things to say to people who are grieving, all of those conversations that are important, even for students to have and for people of the community. And so our volunteers help make that happen. We have about 200 volunteers throughout Sufficient Grace Ministries and 6 paid staff. We also, our support does not stop at the hospital. Sufficient Grace Ministries also offers online and in-person support groups and remembrance events throughout the year, including our famous Remembrance Walk, Pregnancy and Infant Loss Remembrance Walk and 5K, Race for Grace, where we raise the population of Little Deshler, Ohio, where our headquarters is located, by about 800 more people on the first Saturday of October each year. We offer brochures that are translated in English, Spanish, and Arabic in any different type of gestation or gestational loss as well as infancy, and those who receive a life-limiting diagnosis in pregnancy, as well as funeral planning. Sufficient Grace has a 24/7 on-call service. We have a beautiful family support app where you can find helpful links and information, as well as hit a button to chat with or call our comfort doula, who is trained in perinatal and neonatal loss support and can walk with both families and medical professionals who call 24/7. And you can download that app here. More than 18,000 families have been touched by Sufficient Grace Ministries resources or support since 2004. Our in-person footprint is throughout the state of Ohio and a tiny bit of Southeast Michigan. And we have shipped our Dreams of You resources to every single state in the United States, as well as about 35 countries throughout the world. Each year, we are increasing in how many families we're able to support in person at the hospitals and funeral homes that we visit. And in 2023, we went to 43 hospitals and funeral homes, mostly in the state of Ohio and trickling into some of our surrounding states as well. Just incredible testimony being able to serve at so many hospitals and change the story for these families. And the staff really values this program at the hospitals who utilize our services. It's really become not just for the families, but the nurses as well and the doctors. You'll see we do serve the most often in Northwest Ohio. That is where our headquarters is located, and we have had more time to build those relationships with hospitals here. We have the most volunteers in this area as well. The only thing that keeps these other areas from growing is we need more volunteers and more funding, as that growing need of serving more and more families um, is growing, essentially. So are those needs. Ohio is 8th highest in the nation for infant mortality. And so we're really focusing in Ohio on this issue, not just on prevention, but on what do we do when these families walk through loss. And that's where we come in. That's why we're here, to help offer comfort and hope when that unthinkable moment happens, when a parent hears, "I'm so sorry, there's no heartbeat," and it changes their life forever. And another piece of the story we see that people are becoming aware of and starting to focus on more is that the infant mortality rate that Black infants are 2.7 times more likely to not reach their first birthday than other races. And so we are also seeing some of those statistics in the families we serve here at Sufficient Grace, looking at a couple different things. The income of our families. Many of our families are at or below poverty level, and then back to looking at some of those disparities racially in loss. The statistics we see at Sufficient Grace are pretty close to that national average of seeing that 2.4, the rate of 2.4 times higher of loss for African American families. And so that's really an eye-opening statistic, and we want to make sure that we work toward finding out for one, why, but also making sure that we're there for support for these families. Sufficient Grace Ministries does not charge families for our support or resources, and so we are supported by donations, and our generous donors are why we're able to do what we do. So just looking at the breakdown of how we are supported, about 69% of our support comes from individuals, families, sponsorships, church support, businesses, just people who believe in what we do, who give faithfully to sow into this ministry. About 23% of our funding comes from hospital support from our partnering hospitals who believe in this work, and that can fluctuate depending on a hospital's budget. So even though our hospitals value our program, not all of them are able to sow into that and support that financially, or sometimes they can for a period of time, but not ongoing. And so we really do depend on those individual donors. And about 8% comes from grants. That's something we're hoping to increase as we reach out more and more into the community and try to diversify our funding sources. We share all of this with you because we want, number one, we want people to know this resource is here if they need it. And so we're here to, we want you to be able to tell others about the resource so that we can connect parents if they have a need for this type of support, that we can get them connected and offer this to them. We also are always in need of volunteers, not just for our hospital team, but other ways as well. You can go to our website, sufficientgraceministries.org, and click on our volunteer link to fill out an interest form. There's multiple opportunities to volunteer. And financial support. We can't do this without generous hearts who are willing to give toward this ministry. And if you're a praying person, we could use your prayers. This is very heartfelt, difficult work, and we have amazing people who are pouring out their time and their energy to go out and to shine the light in the darkness and serve these families. We can't do it without your prayers. And finally, if you'd like to sponsor an event, donate, or just be part of helping this keep this program going, you can hover here over this QR code, and that'll take you to the link to become a sponsor. And if you are interested in participating in any events, you can also visit this link here at this QR code. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn more about Sufficient Grace Ministries. If you have a need in any way, look us up on Facebook, and please visit our website, sufficientgraceministries.org. We are here for you.